Will is a janitor working at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Despite his remarkable mathematical talent and extraordinary memory, he dropped out of school early due to his rebellious nature. One day, he stumbled upon a math problem on the school corridor's blackboard, piquing his interest. Will, wow, this is an interesting problem. He returned home and quickly worked through it on his mirror, successfully solving it. Without hesitation, he wrote the answer on the blackboard. Will, piece of cake. Unbeknownst to him, the problem was actually posed by the field's medal-winning university professor, Lumbo. Lumbo tasked his students with attempting to solve the problem, but so far, even the top students at MIT were stumped, as only a few individuals, including Nobel laureates, could answer it. The solution caused a huge stir in the mathematics department. The professor was eager to find this genius student, but none of the classmates dared to admit it. So, on the blackboard in the corridor, the professor posed an even more challenging math problem. It took the mathematics department at MIT 2 years to solve it. However, for this genius, it was just a little math game. In less than a minute, he wrote down the answer and the solution process on the blackboard. The professor saw Will doodling on the blackboard. Thinking he was intentionally causing trouble. Will, what are you doing again? The professor asked coldly. Will was frightened and quickly fled, knowing the professor didn't understand his talent. The professor, who spent 2 years overcoming the difficult problem, was surprised to see it effortlessly solved by a janitor, feeling mixed emotions. Will often complained about injustice with his friends and sometimes caused trouble. After being arrested by the police in a brawl incident, Will used his expertise in the American Constitution in court, leaving lawyers speechless each time, yet the judge insisted on convicting him. At the same time, the professor found Will's business card in the school management office and attended the entire defense process in court. The professor witnessed Will's eloquent defense, feeling both amazed and impressed. This young man is so knowledgeable, he murmured softly. His knowledge allows him to handle the courtroom with ease. In court, Will spoke confidently, citing legal precedents, but the judge seemed oblivious to his skill. I won't listen. I'll still convict you, the judge said coldly. Will stood in the dock, wearing a smirk. This time, perhaps I really will be punished, he muttered to himself. The professor observed everything from the sidelines, filled with curiosity about this young man's abilities and destiny. The professor developed a strong interest in this rebellious genius teenager. He requested the judge to release Will, but the judge proposed 2 conditions. First, Will had to meet with Professor Lumbo weekly for advanced math training. Second, Professor Lumbo needed to see a psychologist. Will's astonishing mathematical talent delighted the professor and sparked his desire to nurture it. While the professor provided full guidance in mathematics, he was at a loss in providing psychological counseling. Meyer only temporarily consulted some psychology books, causing renowned psychologists who came for counseling to be at a loss. More surprisingly, he discovered the psychologist was gay, which greatly upset the psychologist. The hypnotist was also mocked by Will as if he were mentally disabled. Lumbo had to turn to his old classmate, Professor San, for help. He told San that Will was an unparalleled genius he had ever seen and hoped San could open Will's defensive heart. During the first conversation between Professor San and Will, it seemed to progress smoothly. However, Will caught a glimpse of Professor San's psychological trauma through a painting, which angered Professor San. However, at the same time, Professor San also developed a great interest in Will. In a bar, Will met a girl named Stella and began dating frequently. Professor San arranged a second meeting with Will, and they went to a riverbank. San said he was suffering from insomnia, but after thinking about something, he fell asleep deeply. You're just a kid who doesn't know what you're talking about, the businessman said. You can understand various superficial arguments from art books and express various artistic viewpoints. But you have never left here. You don't know the smell of the Heston Church, nor have you stood there to admire the beautiful ceiling. But I understand, even about women's issues, you can make firm judgments. Maybe you have had a few sexual experiences, but you have never woken up beside a beloved woman and enjoyed the taste of happiness. Perhaps you are a stubborn child. If I ask you about war, you may quote Shakespeare's plays to talk about the hardships of the battlefield. But you have never experienced the pain of holding your friend's head in your lap, watching him beg in your arms, and then eventually give up his life. For love, you may be able to recite 14 lines of poetry, but you have never truly felt the vulnerability of women. She can deeply touch you with her eyes, as if an angel descended to the earth for you. She can save you from hell, but you don't understand what it feels like when she is an angel, and you have love for her forever. Having experienced the torment of cancer, you cannot understand the feeling of lying in the hospital for 2 months, holding her hand tightly. You have never truly experienced loss because only when you can put others above yourself can you understand this pain. I think maybe you still dare not love someone so deeply. Looking at you, I can't see intelligence. I can't see confidence. I only see a prideful child scared by the world. You are a genius. That is an undeniable fact, but no one truly understands you. You may think you can understand me through a painting, but I can't understand you. No book, no knowledge can truly understand you unless you are willing to share your story with me so that I can be deeply attracted to you. During this conversation, we'll remain silent. During the day, he worked with his friends at the construction site to make a living, and at night, he called Stella in the rain. After the call was connected, silence enveloped them, and neither knew what to say. Dr. San and Will were waiting for the other to speak first, and eventually Will couldn't help it. He started speaking first. He told a joke first, trying to ease the heavy atmosphere. Then he talked about a girl he met, but he hesitated to ask her out again. Because he felt this girl was so perfect, he didn't want to ruin this perfection and was afraid to find out she wasn't as ideal as he imagined. San smiled and said, "Maybe you just don't want to ruin your perfect image." Will nodded lightly, "You're right. It involves an interesting philosophy." San added, "If you're like this for the rest of your life, you may never truly understand anyone." He paused, then smiled and said, "For example, my wife, when she's nervous, she farts, all sorts of quirks." "Haha, that's funny." Will laughed along. "I guess even when he's asleep, he doesn't miss this opportunity?" San smiled and said, "One night, his fart was so loud that it woke up our dog. After waking up, he even blamed me for it." "Haha, that must have been an interesting conversation." Will laughed even more joyfully. He must have thought he woke himself up with his own smell. San added, "He has been dead for 2 years, but I remember only such small things. These quirks are his true self, and they make him my wife. We all know each other's imperfections, but this is the best. People always talk about perfection, but imperfection is the truth." "You're right." Will nodded. "Intimacy between people is about accepting each other's imperfections." San smiled and said, "Exactly. You and the girl you know are not perfect, but the question is, can you adapt to each other perfectly?" Will nodded thoughtfully. "So love is also a process of exploration." San wanted to say something, but San interrupted him. "Time's up, Will. Go find Stella." So Will summoned the courage to meet Stella again, and their relationship quickly warmed up as a result. In the subsequent treatment by San, Will and Stella talked about everything, especially the baseball they both loved. Will gradually opened up. One day, Limbo found San and urged her to speed up the process and break Will's defensive heart. He said, "Compared to Will, what am I? Think about the young physicist in 1905 who changed the world." San hesitated, and Limbo continued, "What if Einstein was drunk every day? We would lose something." "I know, but—" Sin tried to defend herself. "We should give him direction." Limbo interrupted her. "I want to cultivate Will into a great mathematician and change the world." San said softly, "Direction is one thing, manipulation is another. We should let him discover it for himself." Limbo frowned. I'm not planning to carefully plan to destroy his life. I started studying advanced mathematics at the age of 18, and then spent 20 years before I won the Fields Medal. Sen pondered for a moment, then said, maybe he doesn't want to do things your way. Life is not just a series of medals. Why not give him some time to figure out what he really wants? Here's the translation. This meeting had some unpleasant incidents. Blue Demon secured a position in a major company for Will, but Will asked his friend to go for the interview instead, intentionally causing chaos. Stella suggested going to California with Will, but he was worried it might lead to unpleasantness and awkwardness, fearing that their trust might not be enough to sustain a long-lasting love. Stella tried to uncover Will's hidden thoughts, but he was unwilling to reveal more, only briefly mentioning his orphan background and past injuries. Stella expressed her love and support through tears, but Will angrily tore at the pain in his heart. Eventually, Will firmly stated that he didn't love Stella and left, leaving her in anguish. On the other hand, Limbo invited Will to join his math project. Will's talent made significant progress in the project, but Limbo felt increasingly uneasy, realizing he couldn't keep up with Will's thinking speed. Though Will didn't mean to be difficult, his casual attitude left Limbo frustrated, admitting his own inadequacy. Nevertheless, he still admired Will, believing that only a few could understand Will's exceptional talent. One night, San and Will sat in a small tavern. San looked at Will and said, "You know, sometimes I wish I never met you, so I could sleep peacefully at night without worrying about someone like you." Will smiled faintly but remained silent. San continued, "Limbo just introduced me to a job decrypting intelligence codes for the Public Security Bureau. Aren't you considering joining?" Will shook his head and sighed softly, "I think I'll pass. I have my reasons." Frowning, San asked again, "Do you have a soulmate? Someone who truly touches your heart?" Will hesitated slightly before replying, "I do, but I can't remember who it is right now." At that moment, San approached them and said to Will, "It's not about where you work, but whether you can choose freely. Do you know what you want?" Will remained silent for a moment before saying, "I've thought about a simple life, like a shepherd." Sin frowned upon hearing this, clearly dissatisfied. "You're lying, Will. You're avoiding too much." Will didn't respond. He got up and left the tavern, leaving San shaking his head in resignation. Ton, who had overheard the conversation, approached Will and gently patted his shoulder. "Friend, perhaps it's time to leave here. Otherwise, you'll miss out on more." Will nodded silently, knowing his friends were right. In the days that followed, he never sought out Limbo and San again, opting instead to go to the construction site and spend every night with his friends. San continued building the house while Limbo watched, his tone stern. "I warn you, San, I will personally end your life. This is no joke." San stopped his work, his brows furrowed, but he didn't avoid Limbo's gaze. "I'm not joking. I mean it. I will kill you." "You possess talents beyond our reach," Will interjected, curious. "Why does everyone say that?" "Perhaps because I've let myself down," San muttered to himself. "Friend, you haven't let yourself down," Limbo said. "You've let me down. If I wake up tomorrow and I'm 50, still doing the same thing, it won't bother me," San shrugged. "But you have 1,000,000 lottery tickets and are too afraid to cash them in." "Because I'm willing to trade everything for what you have," Limbo said solemnly. "Others are too. If you spend another 20 years here, it's an insult to us, a waste of time," Will stated. "You'll never understand," Will, San said. "But I come for you every day. We go out for drinks and fun. Isn't that nice?" Limbo asked in puzzlement. "But the best moments, you know what they are? Those 10 seconds from the parking lot to your doorstep, because every time, I hope you're not home. No goodbyes, no see you tomorrow, nothing, you just leave," Limbo said with a hint of anger in his tone. "While I may not understand many things, I know clearly that you've lost Will." Limbo found San and reproached him. San responded calmly, "Do you know why he does what he does? Why he avoids, why he doesn't trust?" Because from the moment he was born, he was abandoned by the one who should have loved him the most. Then why is he with those thugs, those idiots? Lumbo asked. Because if he told them to beat you, they'd do it without hesitation, Sen explained. That's called loyalty. He drives them away before they leave. It's a defense mechanism, Sen continued. He's been lonely for 20 years because of it. If you pressure him now, the tragedy will repeat. A figure appeared outside the door, quietly listening to the conversation inside. Don't make him feel it's okay to give up, or that failure is okay. You leaving me, that angers me more than your success, Limbo said. I won't apologize to you for your success. You just did what should have been yours. But ask yourself, do you really want Will to feel that way too? Do you want him to feel like a failure? Lumbo's words carried a hint of helplessness. You may think I'm a failure, but I'm proud of myself. This is my choice, and I don't regret it, San replied firmly. Sean and Will have been old friends for a long time. One day, while Will was contemplating his life, Sean spoke up. You always follow your heart, just as Phil said, Sean remarked thoughtfully. Will chuckled. Why are you still so afraid of failure? Lumbo says you're smarter than me. Sean shook his head. But your current life situation can't be blamed on me. I'm not blaming you, Sean comforted. This has nothing to do with you. It's about that kid. He's a good kid. I won't stand by and watch you ruin him like you've ruined me. I won't let you make him feel like a failure too. If you pressure him, if you try to control him, then any success I have today is because it was forced out of me, Will sighed. He's not you. Sean's tone grew serious. Will, stop it. Will pushed open the door, and the argument between the two ceased. Lumbo silently left. Breaking the silence, Sean said, These are stories from my past, between him and me. Sean openly shared with Will his most secret childhood experiences. It turned out, Sean had also suffered abuse from his father during his childhood. Their experiences were somewhat similar, leading to Will's fear of abandonment due to paternal issues. I don't know much, but this isn't your fault. Barnes tried to comfort Will. It's not your fault, Barnes repeated. All right, it's not your fault. Ha. Will suddenly laughed, his laughter tinged with a sense of relief. After a job interview at a company, Sean asked, Is this the job you want? I guess so, Will hesitated in his response. Sean patted Will's shoulder lightly, then go travel. See what this time's gamble brings you. The two embraced each other, and Will gratefully said, Thank you, Sean. And thank you too. On Will's 21st birthday, his buddies gave him a patched-up car as a birthday present. Will laughed and said, This is the ugliest car I've ever seen in my life. As Sean packed for his trip, Will slipped a note into his mailbox. Will's friend knocked on his door, then smiled knowingly when he confirmed that Will had left, before leaving himself. Will drove down the road towards California, perhaps finally able to answer Sean's simple question. What do you truly want? As Sean captured Will's mind, Will also captured Sean's. Perhaps in the end, Sean understood that life's path has no right or wrong, and you only live once, so why should anyone say your life is wrong? Don't let others tell you that you're a failure. All you need is to sincerely ask yourself, what do I truly want?